Getting up and running with Tyke Community Edition. In this short video, I'm going to show you how to get up and running with Tyke CE. We'll be configuring Tyke as a proxy to the http bin.org request and response service. I'll just show you quickly as an example. If I send a request to the get endpoint, it will return some information. If I send a request to the headers endpoint, it will return the request headers that we sent it. As we can see there. So it's a really good way of a really good service to experiment with APIs. Once we've configured Tyke as a proxy to this service, we'll be protecting that service so that you require an authentication token to access it. And finally, we'll create a key so that we can use that key to gain access once again to HTTP bin. I'll be using Docker containers to get things up and running quickly. So let's get started. I'll start off by creating a quick network. Okay, and I'm going to pull the Docker images which I'm going to require for this service. So what did we do? We just pulled Redis, and this is used to store things like keys and temporary analytics from the gateway, and handle things like Tyke's distributed rate limiter, for example, and then also the gateway itself. So these are the only two components you really need to get up and running with Tyke. Let's start up the gateway, the Redis container. So now we can get Redis up and running. You can see that's up and running there. And we also need to start the gateway. So there's a little bit of configuration, so we can change the standard way of starting the gateway for our specific purposes. So we're starting the gateway container in the Tyke CE network and giving a name, gateway. And then what I'm going to do here is expose a port so we can access it, to expose a port to the host. And I'm going to pass in some environment variables. And you can search the Tyke documentation if you want to configure it further. There's plenty more environment variables, so you can customize Tyke to your needs. So obviously this isn't too secure, but this is for the actual gateway API, so that we can control the gateway, add in API definitions and things like that. I'm just going to, for the speed for this demo, have the secret set to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what we're going to do is tell the gateway the host for the Redis container. And now I'm going to add a few more environment variables. These are, firstly, I'm going to disable the health check API because it slows things down. And I'm also going to turn off the co-process options, which is for gRPC connection. We don't need it for this. And then finally, I need to explain the actual image that needs to be run. Okay, so now you can see it's running, and let's just quickly follow the logs for the gateway. Perfect. So as you can see, Tyke comes with a test or an example API to start with, just to get you up and running. What we're going to do is we'll just ignore that for the time being, but you might want to stop that when you go into production. I have created a few files here. I'm just going to show you the contents of the keyless.json file. And essentially what this is an API definition. So this is a keyless HTTP bin. I've given it a name. It's got an API ID of 1, organization ID of default, use keyless true, auth header name is blank, a few other bits of boilerplate, and then this is the main thing here, this proxy object here. What we're saying is we're listening on the HTTP bin path within the gateway. We're going to proxy to httpbin.org and strip listen path true. What that does is it strips the /http bin from the path so that we don't proxy to httpbin.org/http bin. So it strips that bit out. Okay, so from here, what we need to do is we need to send this API definition into Tyke. So I'm going to set a header x-tyke-authorization, and we set the secret to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then from here, we need to set the content type to application/JSON. And we need to send it the data from keyless.json. So what have we done now? We've created an API within Tyke which proxies up to the HTTP bin service. Let's test it. Right, the reason this didn't work is we need to trigger the gateway to run a hot reload so that it can reload its configurations. Okay, now when we do the curl again, we're now proxying to the HTTP bin service. Now this is all very well, but unfortunately it's keyless and we need to protect the API. So I'm going to quickly show you the protected.json file, which is exactly the same as the keyless.json file. But the difference in this particular API definition is that we've removed the use keyless object, or used keyless key, and we've set the auth header name to authorization. So what we're going to do now is send in the protected configuration. Okay, so now we've added the configuration and we trigger a hot reload. So now when we send a request to the gateway, we get an error saying authorization field missing. Now if we do the same thing but set -v for verbose, we can see we get a HTTP 401 unauthorized error as well. So how do we gain access to this API? What we need to do is create a key within the gateway and attach a session token to it. Here's an example session token. And this session token has an allowance, a rate limit, 1,000 requests per 60 seconds, when it expires, when the quota renews, quota remaining, and gains access to our API ID is 1, so I'm going to have to change that quickly, specific organization, and various other information. Let's just quickly edit that because that should say 1. And now we send a request to the gateway to create the key within the gateway. Now, if I don't provide a value for the key here, I'm going to call it my secret key. But if I don't provide one will be created for me. Content type application JSON, then we have to pass the data. For the session token. And as we can see, we've now created a key within the gateway. Let's send a request to the gateway. Once again, we see authorization field missing. Let's provide the authorization header, but we provide the wrong key. We get key not authorized. We make that as a post. You see we get a 403 forbidden. And now let's send the same request with the correct key. And we're now proxying, we've now protected the HTTP bin service. And that's all there is to it. Thank you.